This is the Forbes Books Podcast, conversations with amazing humans who are impacting the world of business and beyond. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and today we're going to get into real estate. Shelly Henderson and her husband Phil founded Henderson Properties in 1990, growing it from a home office to a company that now manages over 750 residential properties and over 180 residential communities with a staff of 65 employees. Leaving behind her role as a stay-at-home mom, Shelly shares her journey of pursuing entrepreneurship and the American dream alongside raising a family in her book, Starting from Scratch. And I'm lucky to have Shelly joining me in the studio here today. Hey, Shelly, how are you?
Hi, Joe. I'm great.
I'm glad you're great. I'm great, too. And I want to start by talking about real estate. So, full disclosure, I've been a renter my entire life, but I built my first home a year ago.
Congratulations.
Yes, but also what a pain in the ass.
Yes.
It is so much hard work. You know, I remember having to call a super when something didn't work and calling somebody. Now I'm the super of my home. And it's as much as the idea of home ownership, it's the idea of generational wealth, how it's all that stuff. But man, people never talk about all the shit, for part of my expression, that goes into being a homeowner. And you do real estate for a living. So tell me about how you were able to not only handle being the homeowner and doing all this, but then also working in the industry of real estate.
Okay, Joe. First of all, I want to tell you, we love renters. It's part of what we do. We love renters, and it is a little easier, right? You have somewhat of peace of mind. You could just call somebody when something's broken. Call the landlord. Call the management company. We also in our business have a full service maintenance and renovations team. So I know firsthand what those guys go through to repair something. And I myself, back in the day when we started our business, I used to do some of the repairs or paint readies, paint and do basic things. So I've done it all. But yes, I mean, now with homeownership, now you have a yard to take care of. You've got to mow the grass. You have to change the light bulbs. You've got to, watch YouTube so you can fix the toilet. I mean, there is a lot of responsibility, but with the responsibility comes that piece of the wealth for later.
Yeah.
It's a big investment. What I like to say is everybody should diversify their financial portfolio, but with real estate, typically we've seen a growth in Charlotte, 10% growth each year. So, you're getting more bang for your buck, so to speak, when you are a homeowner.
Yeah, no, trust me, I love it, but the fact that it's like, man, it's so strong. I remember when we were getting we had a brand new build, I was getting a leak in the house. I'm like, how is it even possible that a roof is leaking? But that's not here there. Tell me about you and your relationship with real estate, because to me, I've always found it a fascinating industry because, again, it's a growth industry, but there's a lot of highs and lows. There's the environment aspect of it. There's political aspect. There's interest rates, all of the stuff that goes into it. Why do you do that to yourself? Why do you want to be involved in this industry?
I don't know. We're asking ourselves that all the time. I will give the props to my husband who had the vision, and he had his real estate license before we were married.
And you still married him, huh?
Yeah. And you know what happened? Funny story. We were engaged. He said, "How much money do you have saved?" And, at that time was 1990, 1991. I was like, "Oh, I got a couple of $1,000s." He said, "Good, because you need to buy a house as a first-time home buyer. And that's what we're going to do. And it's going to be in your name. And we're going to start our real estate portfolio."
Well, this is the start of a bad Lifetime movie, by the way. Did everything work out? Because nobody got murdered in it. This is how those Lifetime movies start. Well, I'm about to marry you. You've got to buy a house, and I'm going to put it in your name. It all sounds very sketchy, Shelly.
I was young and naive.
Okay.
And in love.
Okay, yeah. All right.
I did whatever he said. So anyway, you know what? It worked out great because that house that I paid $55,000 for, we still own. We rented out. It's paid for. And if I listed it for sale today, it would probably be about $350,000.
Wow.
So I have to say it was a great return on investment.
Yeah.
I'm still married. And, but we took a hobby. We took a hobby and we turned it into a profession that we love. Now it has its perils because trust me, we're not only dealing with an investor or the homeowner. Now we're dealing with the tenant. then we're dealing with, potential maintenance issues. And up until last fall, we were also in the HOA world.
Oh, geez.
Homeowners Association. Now that will cause a divorce.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
And we got out of that. And so now we're sort of pivoting. But the name of my company is Henderson Properties. And full service, family owned and operated. And we've been in business in Charlotte and the surrounding areas for over 25 years.
Wow. God bless you. That's awesome. So now, obviously, there's a lot of verticals within the real estate industry.
Yep.
Why rental properties? Why did you guys steer into that direction?
Well, that too was a little, just sort of stumbled upon it. We started our portfolio when we got married. Like I said, my husband Phil had a house. I owned a house. And then, we were at the age where we had a couple of friends that owned houses and they were getting transferred with jobs. They said, hey, can you manage my house? I want to come back at some point. Yeah, sure. So that went on for about, I guess, 5 or 6 years. And
did you know what you were doing there with that?
No.
I was going to say, can you manage a property? Like, wait a minute, you said you just bought a house. How'd you like that jump?
And it's kind of like being a parent. And that's what we did. We started our company the same time we started our family.
Wow.
Was not planned on either end. And we didn't know what we were doing on any of it. And that's the premise of my book, Starting from Scratch. Because
wow.
We started from scratch. We started our business with nothing. No family money, no loan, no just the want to and the will. We started our family. And when we incorporated our business, my boys were 3 and 9 months old, and it was chaos. And I wish there were social media and reality TV back then, because it would have been a great story.
I'm sure that was a little messy. I'm sure
it was so messy.
It's so funny. I mentioned generational wealth earlier, and I had a conversation with one of my brother-in-law, and he's a very conservative person. He's not a fan of helping other people. And I said to him, I'm like, the difference between a lot of the minority, folks in the minority, because my family's all immigrants. So I come from a minority, even though I look as white as a ghost. But the idea of like needing help along the way. And what a lot of people don't realize is the idea of generational wealth when it comes to homes. And I said to him, do you know what this is? What do you mean by that? He goes, how did you buy your house? I go, well, my dad gave me $10,000 for a down payment. And how did your dad give you that money? He goes, because he owned a house. And what people don't realize is that generational wealth is driven through real estate, mostly in this country. I know there's a lot of ways to do it, but that is a big driver. And that is one of the things that we need to do better of in this country, is helping people buy homes. Not everyone needs to buy a home. We all know that. I probably shouldn't have done it, but I know a lot of people aspire to it, to own a home.
Yes.
So what can we do? What do you think? Like I know you dabble in a lot of the industry. What can we do as a society, as a country, to help people get a better foot at owning a home?
I am so glad you asked that question. I've thought about this a lot, Joe. I'm an educator first. I was a teacher in Charlotte before we started our business. And I'm also a product of public school. We need to bring back economics. We need to bring back the trades and teach kids hard work and how to balance a budget and how to save your money. Because what the young kids want today is instant gratification. And no, you're not going to be able to afford a $500,000 home right off the bat. Start low. My son, who's 28 years old, bought a house 4 years ago.
You waited that long, huh?
Yeah, he was 20. He was 25 years old. We didn't help him. We bought him a washer and dryer for his birthday. But here's the thing. He bought a house where he could afford. It's not in the best area of Charlotte. It's in an up-and-coming area of Charlotte. Some of his friends gave him grief. Dude, why do you want to live over there? There's nothing happening. Well, guess what's happening now? The house that he paid $199,000 for is now worth about $250,000. So you automatically have that sense of worth that I have 4 years equity into it, and now I'm already making money if I were to sell it. So I think we got to go back to the basics. Teach people at a young age how to save their money, what they can afford versus what they want, And also, like you said, not everybody is cut out to be a homeowner, just like not everybody should be a parent, not everybody should be a doctor, whatever the case may be. And renting is great. I recommend renting for a short time and then invest, because what happens is you get that fever and, oh, okay, well, I've lived here for 5-7 years, probably the average people stay in a house, and then you're going to go buy something bigger and better. And, now people my age have reached a point where they're like, well, we'd like to downsize, but, there's nowhere to go.
Right.
Like, we can sell our house for top dollar, but what are we going to...
Where are we going to live?
Yeah. Where are we going to go? So sometimes you just have to sit and be patient. So that's what I would say is we have to go back to the basics. We have to teach people how to save their money. We have to teach people how to be diligent with what they save. People say, I can't afford it, but they're going to Starbucks. They're going out to eat lunch. They're going to the bars on the weekend. They're dropping $100, whatever it is. Just think if you didn't do that.
Yeah.
Don't have a coffee for a week out of the month, and take advantage of things that your employer is offering, 401k or whatever.
Yeah. It's weird. We have this odd relationship with money and talking about it. And I always say, I have to, like, people always say to me, like, how much does it cost to do a podcast? I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to know. I just do the podcast. I don't want to. So I understand. I can sympathize with it. And you mentioned the 401k example. A few years ago, we had just hired this kid. He was probably 24 years old, 25 years old. And he came in running into the studio angry. He goes, can you believe what the office, the business office did? We're like, no, what did they do? They put me in this thing called a 401k. They're taking money out of my check that I could use right now. And then we obviously had to sit him down and tell him about the importance of 401k and retirement funds and everything. Right. But again, this kid was like, come from an affluent neighborhood, is from Long Island, middle-class white kid, didn't understand the idea of what a 401k was. I mean, you would think...
That's what I'm saying.
But people are afraid to talk about it. Like, here's another example, like doctors. When they go to medical school, they never tell them about how do you run an office? How do you balance the books? We're in such a weird place where we don't want to talk about money. And if you don't see it, you can't do it. I always say, that's why people who are like groundbreakers and glass ceiling breakers, the reason they're so important is because then the next generation see that can be done as well. And I think that's for a lot of families that don't come up in a home, maybe they're home renters, they don't see, I could actually own a home. I don't have to rent. So I think there's that. We have to break that cycle of being able to see something to do it.
We do. And, people tend to use, maybe call me old school for a second, but people want to use excuses. You said you came from an immigrant family.
Yeah.
I did too. I'm third generation American on my mom's side. And, people say, well, I can't afford a house. I don't make enough money. Well, when I bought my first house, I was a public school teacher. I made $29,000. Of course, people say, well, the houses, the interest rates were lower. No, they weren't.
They're higher, right?
Yeah. And so it's not how much money that you make. It's what you do with the money that you have. And it's the choices that you make. Are you diligent? You and I have talked before we started recording about people that want to put in the time, don't want to put in the time for the podcasting. They want to be a podcast star, but they don't want to put the time in. They want to be on social media, but they don't want to do it. Well, you get the results that you put into it. And it's no different with money, and it's no different with investing in real estate or whatever else that you're passionate about. Everybody can own a home if they so choose to do it. And it might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but if they're patient and they're diligent and they set their goals. But you're right, people aren't necessarily talking about it, and parents need to do a better job. They can't rely on the schools to teach them everything. They have to, capitalize on the opportunities. This is what you do. This is how you do it. And, my boys were fortunate that in the start of middle school, we put them in private school for a couple of different reasons. They didn't have a cell phone till they were in 8th grade. The only one in their classes.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure of it. They bought their own vehicles when they were 16. They had to, mow the grass. For that reason today, their work ethic is stellar, both of them. They are not afraid to work. They know the worth of a dollar because they've been taught. They've been taught. And they're not perfect by all means. I mean, beside the point. But, They
we do need to air their dirty laundry.
Yeah.
We get
They
it.
can come on later. They can come on later and talk about it. But we got to help these kids. We got to help them. We got to teach them. We got to teach them what it's like to save instead of the instant gratification.
Yeah.
Everything out there today is so quick. Quick turnaround, social media, instant gratification, gaming, whatever. But let's take it down a notch.
Yeah. I love that. You mentioned interest rates, and right now, I think we're recording it. It's really, I think it's in the 7s now, or high 6s, whatever day of the week it is. You're listening to this, but it's really put a crimp on the housing market. How does that affect you in your space when you're working in the rental property space? Obviously, it's not helping. It doesn't affect you with your properties you own now, but if you decide to expand, buy more properties, tell me about what the residual effects in your line of work.
Okay, so I can speak for the Charlotte market and surrounding areas. The interest rates, in our opinion, are not that high. I've seen it higher in my lifetime, and people still bought houses.
Yeah.
It's what do you have to do versus what you want to do. If you don't have to buy right now, you can wait.
Right.
If you want to sell right now, it's a great time to sell. You can go camp out in an apartment. If you have a rental property you can go to and wait it out. And people have asked me lately, do you think it's ever going to be a good time to buy and sell? And the answer, my personal professional opinion, is no. There's never a right time to do both. So you have to capitalize on either or. Right. Is it a good time for you right now to buy, or is it a good time for you to sell right now? Now, I don't want to, make it hard for anybody and say, well, then I'm just not going to do it. Sometimes you have to do what you have to do. But the interest rates they're average. We're never going to see it at 3% again. Yeah. We're just not. Maybe, but we're just not.
Yeah.
I think if we could get it down to 5%, I think, people might be a little bit more comfortable with that rate. The other thing is we got to look at supply and demand.
Yeah.
That drives a lot of it. And right now, the supply is less than it was, say, 3 years ago.
But isn't that a residual effect of the interest rates, though, as well, right? Because people aren't going to sell at this because people aren't going to buy. So there is kind of like a frickin' frack to the whole thing, right? I know, and I've heard the horror stories of like in the 80s, wasn't like the interest rates like 14 or 20%? It was like something crazy. And you wonder, like, how the hell did anyone ever buy?
But they did.
They did.
And everything ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
So right now, the media, whatever, they want to scare people. The interest rates are so high. Well, it depends who you talk to. If you talk to a 30-year-old, yes, it's high.
Yeah.
If you talk to somebody in my phase of life, it is what it is. It is what it is. So I've also heard this quote. I love it. I think it was Dave Ramsey that said, date the rate, marry the house.
Got it. Because you could always refinance. Yeah. The house is the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You love the house. It's a great time for you to buy. You're building a house. Go do it. And then in 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, refinance.
Wow. Yeah. It's so funny. So when we built our house, we did it like right at the tail end of the crazy height of everything. It was like 2022, 23, whatever. Things were just crazy. Like in Charleston, South Carolina, they were doing blind bids for homes. Like you'd have to bid for a house before you was even built. You had to bid on it. And it was like, we did it a couple times. We're like, we cannot do this anymore. So we found a property that we could just put a down payment and build. And I remember we gained like thousands of dollars of equity just during the time that it was built. But then all of a sudden, and I feel like, and I'm speaking to people in the real estate industry, we're sort of at this pendulum swing of post 2008 where building just essentially stopped. And now we're making up for it because now it was like, oh shit, we need more homes.
Yeah.
So now, but then all of a sudden, now the interest rates. So it's like, that's why I said at the start, it's like, what are you doing yourself being in this industry? Because at one point you're going from, we're giving mortgages away for free. Anybody gets a mortgage. And I'm like, oh no, we got to stop. And then we're going to stop building. And then everyone's going to go crazy. And then we're going to hike up the interest rates. And then no one's going to buy a house. I mean, how do you deal with all this?
Well, here's how you deal with it. So we are fortunate that we had the foresight. We have a full service real estate firm. So Henderson Properties offers property management, sales, maintenance, whatever. So when one is not doing so well, the others carry it. So, we're just not relying on sales. And really the renters, the tenants, the investors are the ones that stimulate the economy for us.
Yeah.
The investors that are taking the risk and buying the properties, and then the tenants that are paying rent for them. And speaking of rent, a lot of people want to say, oh, the rents are so high. Yeah. Like it's so unfair. It's terrible. And they want to blame the landlord. It's not the landlord's fault. You have to keep up with the supply and demand. You have to keep up with the insurance rates. You have to keep up with the taxes. Somebody has to pay for all that. And then, it's up to the landlord to decide, okay, how much can I afford to lose? We had, I will say during COVID, we had a plethora of investors that didn't even want us to take rent from the tenants. So I want to give a little shout out to all the investors, because there's a lot of good ones out there that are willing to help when it's needed, and said, you know what, listen, let them have 2 months free or whatever it is. So it keeps the wheels turning.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, and you mentioned the book Starting from Scratch.
Starting from Scratch.
Who's this for? Who's Starting from Scratch for?
Joe, Starting from Scratch was my gift to everybody out there who, at some point or another, is starting over in some capacity. When I wrote the book, I had a story to tell. My first son was going off to college. How dare he? I thought,
he left his mama.
He left me. And I thought, well, what am I going to do now? My company was at a point where it was sustaining itself. I, wasn't working 10, 12-hour days at that time. We knew Adam Whitty and Advantage Media from the business world. And I kept saying I was going to write a book. And my husband said, go write the book. Just write the book. So it's a great, quick read on starting from scratch every day. We all have the opportunity, just like we have the opportunity to do with our money what we would like to do, what we have left of it after we have to, pay bills and everything.
Right.
But starting from scratch is great. It's for the new entrepreneur. It's for the new parent. It's for the person that is, maybe unfortunately going through a divorce or a change in their life, and how they start over and they're trying to navigate life and navigate all of it.
That's awesome. All right, last question.
Okay.
Sliding doors. If you never had that run-in with those friends who said, hey, come and manage these houses for me, do you ever have asked the sliding doors questions like, what if that never happened? Do you envision what your life would have been like if that didn't occur?
I have. I think that opportunity and that sliding door gave us a jump start on what we would have done anyway. We wanted to be entrepreneurs. We had that in our blood, and that's something that we wanted to do. And ironically, and I put this in the book, we had this hobby that we were doing all the while for like 2 years. We were like, oh, we want to start a business. What should we do? We looked at a daycare. Because of my teaching background, we looked at a bridal store because I love event planning and pretty dresses.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, we could do this. And then one day, I think because the sliding door opened to these opportunities, we looked at each other and said, our opportunity is right here.
It's hitting us in the face. Yeah.
We're already doing it. And so there we did. We started from scratch.
That's awesome. Her name is Shelly Henderson. Shelly, thanks for the time.
Joe.
And that'll do it for another Forbes Books podcast. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify and hit subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes. You can always connect with me on X, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Joe Pardavila or TikTok at J Pardavila. And please don't forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.